Captain Lirvax was no stranger to war. He had led fleets into battle, crushed rebellions with an iron will, and faced down death itself without flinching. But nothing had prepared him for this. A human was about to set foot on his ship. Lirvax stood at the command deck of the XSS Indomitable, his 6-clawed fingers drumming impatiently against the smooth black surface of his console. He was a Xelvari, a species feared across the galaxy for their towering 7-foot frames, armoured exoskeletons, and ruthless combat efficiency. Entire civilizations had surrendered at the mere sight of a Xelvari warlord, and few outsiders dared to meet their gaze without trembling. He had opposed this initiative from the beginning. The very idea was absurd. A galactic cultural exchange program was a fool's errand. The Xelvari did not exchange culture. They conquered, imposed, dominated. And yet, despite his protests, here he was, forced to welcome a human onto his warship. The doors to the bridge slid open with a soft hiss. Lirvax inhaled sharply, bracing himself. Jason Carter strolled in with an ease that felt entirely inappropriate for the nerve center of a Xelvari warship. He was small compared to the towering armored crew members surrounding him, his unassuming frame clad in a standard-issue Galactic Exchange uniform. But what unsettled Lirvax most was the complete and utter lack of fear. Any rational being would have hesitated, perhaps even recoiled, upon stepping onto a Xelvari warship. Instead, this human moved as if he was strolling into a coffee shop. "Hey, Cap," Jason said with a wide grin, dropping his duffel bag onto the floor with an audible thud. "Nice digs you got here. Real minimalist vibe. Love it." Several officers turned sharply, their mandibles clicking in disbelief. One, Lieutenant Vrixer, shot the captain a look of utter confusion, as if asking whether the human had a death wish. Speaking so casually to Captain Lirvax, as if he were some lowly deckhand. Lirvax leaned forward slightly, his full imposing height casting a shadow over the human. His armoured exoskeleton shifted with a faint, deliberate creak, his claws tapping against the console in slow, measured clicks. His mandibles flared slightly, a Xelvari gesture that, to any rational being, screamed impending violence. "Captain Lirvax," he corrected coldly, "and this is a Xelvari warship, not whatever digs are." He expected the human to at least falter, to show some recognition of the danger he was in. Jason, however, remained unfazed. Right. Formalities, my bad." He gave an exaggerated salute, then promptly leaned against the nearest console, earning scandalized stares from the bridge officers. No one leaned on Xelvari military equipment, not unless they wanted to lose a limb. Lirvax's mandibles twitched, but it was his left eye that gave a single, involuntary jerk as he processed the sheer casualness of the human's response. Why wasn't he afraid? "So, where am I bunking?" Jason continued, completely ignoring the death glares from the Xelvari officers. "Hope it's not near the engine room. I tend to sleep through alarms." Lieutenant Varick visibly stiffened, his gaze flicking between Jason and the captain, as if waiting for Lirvax to strike the insolent creature down. The silence on the bridge stretched, thick with incredulity. Lirvax inhaled sharply, resisting the urge to slam his forehead against his console. Intimidation was a universal language. It worked on everyone, and yet somehow this human didn't care. "You were assigned here by the Galactic Council as part of the Human Integration Initiative," Lirvax said, forcing the words out through clenched mandibles. "Your role is—" He paused, glancing at the datapad on his console, as if rereading the words would somehow make them less offensive. "To foster interspecies understanding and improve morale through human social methodologies." Jason gave him finger guns. "Yep, that's me. Resident morale booster. I take my job very seriously." Lieutenant Krivnax let out a strangled noise. Lirvax stared at him. Surely he is joking. But there was no sign of hesitation, no nervous shifting, just that insufferable grin. "I highly doubt that," Lirvax muttered, already feeling the onset of a headache. "You will be assigned quarters in the crew section. You will follow all Xelvari protocols, and you will not disrupt operations. Is that understood?" "Crystal clear, Cap." Jason grinned. "Hey, is there a cafeteria on this ship? Because I was promised snacks." Lirvax's mandibles twitched again. He had faced enemy armadas, navigated asteroid fields, and survived a direct encounter with a void leviathan. But somehow he knew this human was going to be his greatest challenge yet. It took precisely 2 hours for Jason to make his presence on the ship painfully known. The first incident happened in the mess hall. Xelvari warriors, hardened veterans of countless battles, were accustomed to eating in disciplined silence. That was until Jason waltzed in, plopped down at a table, and immediately began chatting. "So, do you guys have, designated meal buddies, or is this a free-for-all kind of situation?" he asked, looking around at the silent armoured figures. A Xelvari lieutenant, caught mid-bite, stared at him as if he had just suggested dueling the ship's AI to the death. "We eat in silence," he stated stiffly. "Weird. Okay, so you guys ever had pizza?" The silence that followed was somehow heavier than before. Someone shifted uncomfortably. Another officer, a burly reptilian Xelvari named Krivnax, cautiously leaned in. "What is pizza?" Jason gasped. "Oh, buddy, we are so going to fix that." Lirvax was just about to enjoy his short meditation cycle when his second-in-command, Commander Vrixer, stormed into his quarters, looking uncharacteristically rattled. "Captain," she said urgently, "we have a situation." Lirvax groaned. "Did the human break something already?" "No, sir, he is talking to the crew." Lirvax frowned. "That is not illegal. But they are talking back." Lirvax paused. That was unusual, deeply unusual. Xelvari ships functioned on strict hierarchy and discipline. Conversation was minimal, and morale was maintained through efficiency, not idle chatter. If the crew was engaging in socialization, unstructured socialization, then Jason was already causing damage to protocol. He stood. Where is he now? The mess hall, attempting to introduce a team-building exercise. Lirvax swore under his breath and stormed out. By the time Lirvax arrived, chaos had already unfolded. The entire mess hall, normally a place of silent, orderly meals, was in disarray. A group of Xelvari officers stood in an awkward circle while Jason bounced between them, grinning like he had just won a battle. The ship's AI, Shiv 3, was projecting some kind of timer in the air. And worst of all, Krivnax, the massive, terrifying warrior known for single-handedly crushing a rebel uprising, was standing stiffly, holding a piece of paper and muttering, "2 truths and a lie. I have conquered 7 worlds. I once wrestled a death beast. And I enjoy painting." There was a moment of silence. Then one of the insectoid crew members cautiously asked, "Which one is the lie?" Krivnax shifted. "The first one. I have actually conquered 8. Jason clapped his hands. "See, this is what I'm talking about. We're learning things about each other. This is bonding." Lirvax had seen enough. "Human!" he bellowed, causing the entire room to freeze. Jason turned, looking entirely unbothered. "Hey, Cap, you want to join? You strike me as a prefers long walks through asteroid fields kind of guy." Lirvax inhaled deeply. "What is happening here?" "Icebreaker game," he said cheerfully. "Great for morale, helps build trust." Lirvax's eye twitched. "We do not need trust. We need order." "Why not both?" Jason countered. "Come on, Lirvi. Give it a shot." The room fell deathly silent. Every Xelvari present turned to their captain, waiting to see if the human would be vaporized on the spot for such insolence. Lirvax's claws clenched. His patience had never been tested this severely in his entire career. He should have put an end to this nonsense. He should have ordered him to return to his quarters and never attempt morale boosting again. Instead, against his better judgment, he found himself saying, "Fine. 1 round. Then this stops." Jason's grin widened. "Hell yeah! All right, Cap. 2 truths and a lie. Let's hear it." Lirvax groaned. This human was going to be the death of him. Captain Lirvax had managed to restore some semblance of order after the disastrous icebreaker incident, but the human problem remained. Jason Carter, the so-called cultural exchange officer, had infected the XSS Indomitable with something disturbingly persistent, an air of camaraderie that refused to dissipate. Lirvax had hoped the crew would grow tired of Carter's antics, that they would naturally gravitate back their structured, disciplined way of life. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The human had been here for less than a week, and yet already Lirvax was hearing chatter on the ship, warriors conversing, officers laughing. He caught 2 engineers discussing something called memes, a word that, when he looked it up in the Galactic database, only deepened his confusion. And now there was a new problem. Jason Carter had acquired a creature. Lirvax had been reviewing battle simulations in his quarters when the alert chimed on his console. A message from Commander Vrixer. "Human Carter has smuggled an unauthorized life form onto the ship. Please advise." With a sinking feeling, Lirvax marched toward the main deck, antennae twitching with irritation. When he arrived, he was greeted by an inexplicable sight. Jason standing proudly in the middle of the room, a small four-legged creature sitting at his feet. It was covered in thick fur, with large dark eyes and a tail that wagged furiously back and forth. Several Xelvari officers stood at a cautious distance, hands drifting toward their weapons as they regarded the creature with a mix of suspicion and horror. Lirvax stared at Jason, then at the animal. "Human, explain." Jason beamed. "Captain, meet Luna. She's an emotional support dog." Lirvax stared at Jason again and then at the small fur-covered creature sitting at his feet. It was tiny, fragile, pointless. The Xelvari had no use for animals that did not hunt, fight, or serve a direct function. Lirvax processed that for a moment. "She is emotional support?" "Yeah, it's a human thing. See, dogs help with stress and morale. And after that icebreaker session, I realized you guys could really use one." Lirvax turned his four eyes toward Luna, who let out a soft woof and promptly rolled onto her back, presenting her belly. Jason crouched down and rubbed the dog's stomach as if this were a perfectly normal thing to do aboard a warship. The Xelvari captain closed his eyes for a long, pained moment. "Human Carter, we are aboard a vessel of the Xelvari Armada. This is not a recreational cruiser. What possible justification do you have for bringing an Earth animal aboard?" Jason stood, crossing his arms. "Simple. You guys are way too high-strung. This ship is basically one giant stress ball, and stress is bad for efficiency, which means Luna here is actually improving operations." Commander Vrixa stepped forward, looking deeply unsettled. "Captain, this creature is unpredictable. What if it carries pathogens? What if it attacks?" Jason snorted. "Luna? Attack? She's more likely to try and lick your face than bite anyone." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small document. "Also, I already got clearance from Galactic Exchange. Turns out emotional support animals are covered under interspecies cooperation clauses." Lirvax snatched the document, scanning it quickly. His mandibles clicked in frustration. The bureaucrats at Galactic Exchange had, indeed, approved the presence of an Earth canine for morale purposes. He exhaled slowly. "Fine, the creature may stay. However, it is your responsibility, Carter. If it causes disruptions, it will be removed from this ship. Is that clear?" Jason grinned. "Crystal," Luna barked happily. It quickly became evident that Luna's presence was, as Jason had predicted, deeply disruptive, but not in the way Lirvax had expected. The Xelvari, a species renowned for their discipline and emotional detachment, had no frame of reference for affectionate animals. At first, they simply avoided Luna, regarding her as some strange human aberration. But Luna, as it turned out, was a relentless diplomat. She trotted up to officers in the hallways, tail wagging. She sat patiently beside warriors at their stations, looking up at them with wide, trusting eyes. And most effectively, she seemed to have an uncanny ability to seek out the most emotionally stunted members of the crew and demand their attention. Krivnax, the terrifying war hero, was the first to fall. Jason found him standing stiffly in the armory, staring down at Luna as she sat by his feet. She had somehow cornered him, and despite his reputation as an unshakable warrior, he looked completely out of his depth. "She is staring," Krivnax rumbled uncertainly. "Yeah," Jason said, grinning. "She likes you." Krivnax glanced around as if checking for witnesses. "What does she want?" Jason knelt beside Luna and gave her a scratch behind the ears, mostly belly rubs, maybe some treats. Krivnax hesitated, then slowly, awkwardly, reached out a clawed hand and gave Luna a single hesitant pat on the head. Luna promptly flopped onto her back. Krivnax made a low, confused noise. "She has been defeated?" Jason snickered. "Nah, she just trusts you." Krivnax stared at the small, vulnerable creature at his feet, his massive hands hovering uncertainly. Then, after a long moment, he crouched down and gently ran a hand over her belly. "She is soft," he murmured, as if this were some grand revelation. Jason grinned. "Yeah, buddy. Welcome to the magic of dogs." A week later, Lirvax realized he had lost control of his ship. It started with minor things. Officers pausing in the corridors to watch Luna chase her tail, warriors subtly reaching down to scratch her ears as she passed. Then came the undeniable, irrefutable proof of total breakdown. Lirvax caught Shiv 3, the ship's AI, running a sensor sweep, specifically to track Luna's location. "What?" Lirvax asked, voice dangerously calm. "Are you doing?" Shiv 3's holographic form flickered. Monitoring the K9's well-being, Captain. Crew efficiency has increased by 6.4% when Luna is in common areas. Lirvax stared at the AI. You approve of this? Statistics indicate she has improved morale significantly. Additionally, Krivnax has shown a 12% decrease in aggression levels since engaging with the K9. Lirvax turned to Jason, who was leaning casually against a console, grinning ear to ear. Told you, Cap. Science is on my side. The Xelvari captain exhaled slowly. He looked around the bridge, where Luna was currently curled up at the feet of a tactical officer, tail twitching as she napped. The officer in question, one of his most rigid and rule-abiding subordinates, was pretending not to be smiling. Lirvax sighed, rubbing his temples. Fine, the creature may stay, but if I catch anyone derelict in their duties because of her... A soft woof interrupted him. He looked down to see Luna staring up at him, tail wagging. Lirvax groaned. By the void, what have I allowed? Yet, as Luna trotted up and sat beside him, gazing up with complete trust, Lirvax felt something he couldn't quite place. A shift. Jason chuckled. Congrats, Cap. You just got an emotional support crew. Lirvax wasn't sure whether to call that a victory or a defeat. Captain Lirvax had witnessed countless battles, commanded forces across star systems, and negotiated high-stakes treaties with war-hardened species. None of those experiences had prepared him for what he was about to endure. Game night. It started, as all human-related disturbances did, with Jason Carter. The human had an uncanny ability to infiltrate the rigid structures of Xelvari protocol with his baffling yet disturbingly effective morale-boosting ideas. First, it was the icebreakers. Then came the emotional support dog, which had, to Lirvax's eternal frustration, improved efficiency. And now? Now Jason had convinced the crew to participate in something called game night diplomacy. I promise you, Cap, Jason had said over lunch, between bites of something that smelled disturbingly spicy, this is exactly what the diplomatic corps would recommend. Lirvax eyed him skeptically. The Galactic Council endorses games? Well, not officially, Jason admitted, but they should. Look, most interspecies conflicts come from misunderstandings, right? Different cultures, different values. Games are a perfect way to build trust. You can tell a lot about a species based on how they play. Commander Vrixa, sitting across from them, looked deeply unconvinced. The Xelvari do not play, Jason smirked. Then this will be a learning experience. Lirvax pinched the bridge of his nose. He already regretted asking. And what exactly does game night diplomacy entail? Jason leaned back with an infuriatingly smug grin. Well, first, we need a selection of games, and second, we need teams. Lirvax already had a bad feeling about this. The mess hall had been converted into an impromptu game arena. Tables were rearranged, monitors displayed rule explanations, and Jason stood at the center, gleefully explaining the event to a crowd of very uncomfortable-looking Xelvari officers. All right, folks, welcome to Game Night Diplomacy. The rules are simple. We'll be playing a variety of human games designed to test teamwork, strategy, and most importantly, trust. First up, poker. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. Lirvax crossed his arms. Human, explain. Jason gestured dramatically. Poker is a game of deception and strategy. The goal is to make your opponents think you have a better hand than you actually do. Or, in some cases, make them think you're bluffing when you actually have the best hand. Krivnax, the hulking war veteran, frowned. Deception is dishonorable. Jason smirked. So is losing. But in poker, everyone has to lie. It's an even playing field. The Xelvari shifted uncomfortably. Lying was not something they were accustomed to, at least not in structured scenarios. Vrixa narrowed her eyes. This sounds like psychological warfare. Exactly, Jason said. Great practice for diplomacy. 15 minutes in, Lirvax was convinced that poker had been a mistake. The Xelvari, trained in strict honesty and military precision, were terrible at bluffing. Krivnax's expression never changed, but he folded every time Jason raised the stakes. Vrixa, unable to grasp the concept of a poker face, kept inadvertently announcing what was in her hand, and one particularly anxious officer kept whispering, "But why would you lie?" every time Jason played his turn. By round 3, Jason had won nearly every hand. He sat back, stacking his pile of credits. Well, that was educational. Lirvax scowled. I fail to see how this benefits interspecies relations. Diplomacy is all about reading people, Cap, Jason replied, flicking a card onto the table. You've got to know when someone is holding a strong position and when they're just pretending. You'd be surprised how much this translates to real negotiations. Lirvax admitted begrudgingly that the logic was sound, even if the execution had been painful. After the poker incident, Jason moved on to something he called charades. The rules are simple, he announced. One person acts out a word or phrase without speaking, and their team has to guess what it is. No talking, no writing, just movement. The Xelvari were immediately suspicious. This is pointless, Vrixa muttered. How does this relate to diplomacy? Jason grinned. Non-verbal communication, my dear commander. Not all negotiations happen with words. Lirvax groaned. He had already resigned himself to this madness. The first round began with Jason acting out fishing. He mimed casting a line, reeling it in, and holding up an invisible fish. It took the Xelvari a full 5 minutes to arrive at the conclusion. Is this a primitive combat maneuver? By the time Krivnak's attempted hug, it had devolved into a crisis. What is he doing? An officer whispered. Jason was nearly in tears. He's trying to mimic affection. The entire room recoiled. Vrixa shook her head. This game is horrifying. With the evening spiralling toward disaster, Jason made a desperate play. He reached into his bag and pulled out a deck of colourful cards. All right, last game. If this doesn't bring us together, nothing will. Lirvax narrowed his eyes. What is it this time? Uno. The rules were explained quickly. Play cards by matching colours or numbers and force opponents to draw cards using special action cards. The Xelvari seemed relieved. This game appeared simple. It took precisely 10 minutes for them to start viewing it as an act of war. You dare stack a draw 4 card on me? Krivnax bellowed, rising to his full height. Jason cackled. You should have not challenged me, buddy. Vrixa slammed her hand down. This game breeds betrayal. A nearby officer groaned, holding a full hand of cards. This is the worst night of my existence. Lirvax stared at the chaos around him. Officers who had once prided themselves on composure were now glaring at each other with barely contained rage. Krivnax was clutching his cards like they were a tactical battle plan. Shiv 3, the ship's AI, had started calculating statistical odds for optimal play strategies. And Jason? Jason was loving it. This, Lirvax muttered, is a disaster. Jason just grinned. No, Cap, this is diplomacy. Lirvax wasn't sure whether he was impressed or horrified. By the end of the night, the Xelvari had gained a new appreciation for human games, and, unfortunately, a deep-seated grudge against Jason Carter for his ruthless Uno strategies. But as much as Lirvax hated to admit it, something had shifted. The crew was more engaged. There was an energy on the ship that hadn't been there before, and as much as he despised the method, he couldn't argue with the results. As Jason walked past him, humming to himself, Lirvax sighed. Human. Jason paused. Yeah, Cap, Lirvax exhaled. Game night will be permitted. Once per cycle. Jason's eyes lit up. You got it, boss. As the human walked away, Krivnax loomed beside Lirvax, still clutching his Uno cards. I will have my vengeance. Lirvax pinched the bridge of his nose. I fear what we have unleashed. Jason's laughter echoed down the corridor. Diplomacy, indeed. The air aboard the Indomitable was thick with a strange energy, the echoes of shared laughter still lingering from the previous evening. For the first time in recorded history, a Xelvari warship had embraced human customs as an integral part of daily operations. The crew had adapted surprisingly well, incorporating emotional connection into their routines. The Indomitable had changed. Lirvax had spent years maintaining a warship built on discipline and precision. Yet now he found himself standing in the mess hall, watching as his crew, his warriors, leaned in with genuine curiosity, while Jason explained something called a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And for some reason they were listening. He was just about to leave when the ship's emergency sirens blared. All sense of ease evaporated in an instant. Lirvax's mandibles flared as he barked out orders. All personnel report to battle stations. Jason looked around, stunned. Should I also... Move, human! Vrixa snapped, dragging him toward the bridge. The bridge was a flurry of activity. The crew worked swiftly, their movements honed from years of battle-ready discipline. Lirvax took his position at the command console, his mandibles twitching. Report, Krivnax, the ship's tactical officer, growled. A distress signal, Captain. Origin unknown. Unknown? Lirvax frowned. Translate. We can't. Jason peered over Krivnax's shoulder, staring at the screen. A series of garbled transmissions flickered, the symbols unlike anything he had seen before. Great, he muttered. So it's either an alien in need of help or a trap. Either way, we must investigate, Lirvax declared. Prepare for immediate warp. The ship jolted as the Vraxilon launched into faster-than-light travel, streaking toward the distress beacon. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Even HFY, the ship's AI, was unusually quiet. A boarding party was assembled, Lirvax, Vrixa, Krivnax, 2 armed Xelvari soldiers, and, of course, Jason, because of course he was going. As the airlock hissed open, the team stepped into the derelict ship. The atmosphere was eerily still, the only sound the distant hum of failing systems. The walls were scorched, deep claw-like marks running along the metal. Jason gulped. I don't like this, he muttered. Lirvax signalled for silence. The team moved cautiously through the corridors, their weapons drawn. The deeper they ventured, the more unsettling the scene became. Abandoned equipment, shattered consoles, and the occasional dark stain that Jason refused to acknowledge. Then came the sound, a deep guttural rasp from the darkness ahead. Jason whispered, "Oh, hell no!" A shadow moved. Vrixa raised her weapon. "Identify yourself." Silence. Then from the darkness, a figure stumbled forward. Its form was unfamiliar, but its eyes, large, desperate, held something Jason recognized immediately. Fear. The alien collapsed before them, its body weak and trembling. Its exoskeleton was cracked, its breathing shallow. They brought it aboard the Indomitable. Lirvax knelt beside it, scanning its injuries. Severely dehydrated, malnourished. Jason hesitated, then pulled something from his pack, a bottle of water. Without thinking, he held it out. The alien stared at him, then at the bottle. Slowly, it reached out, its fingers shaking. It took a sip, then another. A moment later, its breathing steadied. Vrixa whispered, "You think it understands?" Jason nodded. "I think we just saved a life." The alien, now regaining consciousness, blinked weakly, its gaze flickering between them before settling on Lirvax. Its voice was rasping, fragile but clear. "I was a scientist, in captivity, forced to develop bioweapons." Lirvax tensed, exchanging a glance with Vrixa. Jason leaned in, his expression grim. "By who?" The alien swallowed hard, its mandibles trembling. "The research, it must not fall into the wrong hands." It exhaled sharply, as if the weight of the words had drained the last of its strength. Its eyes fluttered closed. Jason caught its arm. "Hey, stay with us." Vrixa scanned its vitals. "It's still stable, just unconscious." Lirvax straightened, his mandibles clicking in contemplation. "Then we need answers, and fast." Before they could process the implications, HFY's voice crackled over their comms. "Captain, urgent report." Lirvax pressed his communicator. "Go ahead. External sensors have detected an incoming warship. Trajectory suggests pursuit of this vessel." Jason stiffened. "Wait, you're saying..." Krivnax snarled. "This was no accident. This ship was hunted." Outside, in the darkness of space, a hostile signature appeared on the radar. The crisis had only just begun. The air aboard the XSS Indomitable was thick with tension. On the main display, the massive enemy vessel, a Class 3 dreadnought, loomed, a monstrous behemoth of war, easily thrice the size of their own ship. Its dark hull was covered in battle scars, a testament to its long and bloody history. This was not an opponent they could fight head-on. But that wasn't the worst part. The transmission had been clear. Return the fugitive or be annihilated. The fugitive in question, the frail, terrified scientist they had pulled from the derelict ship, lay curled in a corner of the bridge, his 4 spindly arms still clutching the tattered remnants of a datapad. He had fled with research the enemy desperately wanted silenced. Commander Vrixa turned to Lirvax, voice low and grim. "Captain, we must comply. That's a Class 3 dreadnought. We have no chance against it." Lirvax's claws curled into fists. His species, the Xelvari, had never been ones to bow to threats, but the brutal enemy before them had crushed fleets larger than theirs, and their weapons could tear the Indomitable apart with ease. The logic was clear, and yet logic had never accounted for humans. Jason Carter, the ship's cultural exchange officer and persistent source of madness, leaned against the command console with an unsettlingly relaxed posture. But for once, his voice carried no trace of humor. "Look, handing him over is the easy move, sure, but morally, that's straight-up garbage, and strategically, it's even worse. He gestured at the unconscious scientist. This guy wasn't just locked up for fun, he was forced to build bioweapons, and now they're not just trying to kill him, they're trying to wipe him off the map. That tells me two things. One, whatever's in his head or on that datapad is something real bad. And two, they don't want anyone else to get their hands on it. So yeah, we could roll over and let them clean up their mess. But let's be real, that's not survival. That's handing a bunch of trigger-happy psychos a super weapon on a silver platter. And I don't know about you, but I'm not about to be the guy who helped some warlord finish their next apocalypse machine. Jason added, "There is no guarantee they will let us live even if we hand him over. There is only one way out. Deception." A heavy silence settled over the bridge. Vrixa's mandibles clicked as she exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "This is reckless. If we do not comply, they will attack." Krivnax, the massive warrior who had remained silent until now, rumbled, "And if we do comply, we will have aided them in creating a weapon that could wipe out entire worlds." His claws tightened around the hilt of his blade. "I do not like this human's methods, but his logic is sound." Lirvax stood motionless, his four eyes locked on Jason. There was a deep, simmering frustration in his gaze, but beneath it, something else. Calculation. A reluctant acknowledgement that the human had, once again, forced them to reconsider the simple path. Finally, the captain exhaled slowly, mandibles flaring. "Surrendering the scientist would be the safest choice for us, but it would damn every world that weapon touches." He turned to his officers. "The Xelvari are warriors. We do not bow to fear, and we do not aid those who seek to destroy others." Vrixa tensed. "Then we fight." Lirvax's gaze hardened. "No, as the human said, it's poker time." A slow grin spread across Jason's face. "Now that's what I like to hear." Vrixa hesitated. "Sir, they outmatch us in every way. They know this." "Sure," Jason agreed, "but they don't know everything. What if we made them doubt, make them wonder if they're stepping on a minefield?" Krivnax's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "A bluff," Jason pointed at him. "Exactly. We convince them we've got a secret ace, a super weapon." The bridge fell silent as the Xelvari officers processed the sheer audacity of the plan. Varric, the ship's engineer, rumbled, "Even if they hesitate, they will demand proof." Jason's grin widened. "That's where you come in." Minutes later, the Indomitable sent its response. "Return to your space or be destroyed." The enemy captain's jagged face appeared on the view screen, twisted in a sneer. "Really? You expect us to believe your tiny ship holds such power?" Lirvax sat in his chair, his expression cold, unreadable. He had spent the past few weeks enduring Jason's bizarre games, poker, charades, ridiculous bluffs. Now he put that experience to use. His mandibles twitched once, then stilled. His posture remained relaxed, a true poker face. "We expected you to be more intelligent," Lirvax said calmly. "We thought you would recognize a ship with Class Phi Omega capabilities when you saw one." The enemy captain's sneer faltered, but only for a second before twisting into a look of deep skepticism. "This is absurd. A vessel of your size wielding such power? You must take me for a fool." Lirvax smirked. "Then call it." The enemy hesitated, just barely. But it was enough, Jason muttered under his breath, "and now we up the stakes." On a subtle hint from Jason, Varric, watching from the engineering bay, did what he was told. Activating the second phase of their ruse, he initiated the impossible, overloading the Indomitable's core. Power levels across the ship spiked dramatically. The core, usually a steady hum, roared to life with an unstable, deafening pulse. The ship's hull flickered with energy as if something immense were charging. Overloading a core was not a simple trick. It could result in a complete system shutdown, or worse, a catastrophic explosion. The sheer improbability of such an act only cemented the enemy's doubts. Perhaps the Indomitable did have a weapon of unimaginable power. Lirvax leaned forward ever so slightly. "You have seconds to decide." The enemy commander hesitated. His warship outmatched them, but if there was even the slightest chance the Indomitable carried a doomsday weapon, the risk was catastrophic. His second-in-command whispered something to him, too soft for the transmission to catch. But Jason could see the moment doubt began to take hold. The balance was tipping. They needed one final push. Lirvax, without missing a beat, delivered it. He slowly stood, exuding the same confidence Jason had shown at the poker table, and let out a low, menacing chuckle. "Of course. Lirvax mused. You could test your luck. Just know that this ship has nothing left to lose. The enemy captain's eyes flickered. The bluff was suspect, but the certainty in Lirvax's voice planted fear, a tiny nagging doubt that the risk was too great. Lirvax made his final move. He tilted his head, allowing just the barest hint of amusement to seep into his voice. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, warrior? Jason's eyebrows shot up. A slow grin spread across his face. Oh, you magnificent bastard, he whispered. Silence stretched, the tension was palpable. Then the enemy commander snarled, slammed his fist onto his console and barked an order. The transmission cut. On the view screen, the massive warship, an apex predator in its domain, turned sharply and vanished into the void. The bridge was utterly still. Then Varric let out a sharp, barking laugh. By the stars, they ran. He exhaled, glancing at the core's power levels. Another few minutes and we might have exploded ourselves. Jason grinned, slumping into his seat. Holy hell, that actually worked. Lirvax exhaled, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction. They feared what they could not understand. He turned his gaze to Jason. Your methods are reckless, Jason shrugged, and effective. A pause. Lirvax glanced at the view screen where the enemy ship had fled into the void. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he turned to Jason and extended a clawed hand. Jason blinked, then grinned as he shook it. See? You're getting it. Lirvax's mandibles twitched in something dangerously close to amusement. Perhaps, Krivnax rumbled from his station, but I will have my revenge in Uno. Jason cackled. Bring it on, big guy. Bring it on.